What's going on, WMB Youth? This is Brad here. Welcome to the WMB Youth Podcast. Recently, we started a new series at Senior Youth called Live Your Truth and Other Lies. And live your truth, that phrase is one of these many societal phrases that a lot of people live by and believe in without question. But this series is all about analyzing those and asking some good questions. Is it an accurate way to live? Is it good advice for us? And so in this series, we're going to learn to analyze, critique, and just kind of decipher the meanings behind these common messages coming at us from our culture. And by turning to Jesus' words in the Sermon on the Mount, we're going to learn to chew the meat and spit out the bones, to keep what is good and to reject what is not of the truth of Jesus. So we hope you are excited about this series, and wherever you might be listening from, we hope this is beneficial for you. We love you guys, and if you ever get the chance to come on out on a Friday night at 7 o'clock, we would love to have you there. So without further ado, here is the latest recording from our series, Live Your Truth and Other Lies. Enjoy.
Alrighty. Thanks, guys. All right. Imagine you turn 18 years old. Okay? Turn 18 years old. You decide to go and buy a lottery ticket. Any of you in here 18 yet? None of our grade 12s are here tonight. Yes, Derek, you are. Yep. Owen, okay, yep. Mm-hmm. All right. Any of you got an early birthday? Who's got an early birthday? No one's got an early birthday? Yeah? When's your birthday? Of this month. Ooh, happy early birthday. Okay, I was one of those people who had an early birthday. Okay, so when I was in grade 12, my birthday's January 8th, I was 18. I was still in high school. Then I did a fifth year. I was actually 19 when I was still in high school. That feels too old. That's not a brag. Anyways, imagine you turn 18, okay, and you go and you decide to buy a lottery ticket because, hey, you're 18. You can just go and do it. It's mostly for funsies. And so you go to work one day after you've bought your lottery ticket, and you realize, oh, your work buddies, they're all talking about the news. They're all like, yo, have you heard the news? The winning $48 million jackpot was a ticket bought in your city. You haven't checked your ticket yet. So you're like, what if? You go and you check your ticket. Guess what? It's yours. You won $48 million. Okay, what would your response be in that moment? Yeah, no kidding. Turns out, that actually happened. That happened last month to an 18-year-old girl named Juliet in Sault Ste. Marie. That actually happened. She won $48 million. She's an 18-year-old biology student from Sault Ste. Marie, and she decided to do this after her grandpa suggested she do it for her 18th birthday. Here's what she said, and I quote, he said to me, "You just turned 18. Go buy a lottery ticket. Test your luck." So I did. First ever. Amazing. And she said her plan is to invest the money and maybe use a little bit to take a trip this summer. That sounds like fun. All right, your turn. It's a classic question. What would you do if you won the lottery? Okay, what would you do if you won $48 million freaking dollars? Okay, turn the person next to you. Go.
A few moments later.
All right, we got to hear this. This is going to be good. What would you do if you won $48 million? I want to know. Alex, coming over to you. What would you do?
Donate.
All of it? Most of it. All right. You could donate like $47 million and still be a millionaire. All right, what else?
Buy more lottery tickets.
Why? You have $48 million. You're never going to win again. All right, Madison.
I'd redo my house.
Redo your house. You have a beautiful house. You have like the ultimate party backyard. You know that? Have you been to her house? They have a pool. It's massive. A really cool back deck, like a fun tree to climb, a trampoline, and a swing. Okay, but it's okay. You're still allowed to renovate your house. Anyways. All right, who else? Avalee?
I'd be set for university, so like no student debt would be nice.
Yup. You are correct, madam. Come on, let's keep going here.
I'd renovate my house and
You guys don't even have houses yet.
no, I'd invest some of it and donate $7 million.
Invest some, donate $7 million. I like that. All right, let's keep going here.
What if we work to translate the Bible into other languages?
That's already been done. You don't need to win the lottery to do that.
In every single language.
Every single language. I guess you guys are the weirdest youth group I've ever heard. All right, come on, Derek, give me something good here.
I'd go to McDonald's. No, I'm just kidding. I would invest pretty much all the $48 million and try and grow that money, and then the money I grew it with, I would donate and do other things.
Wow. All right, come on. No one's buying a car? I'm buying a car. I want to go on a trip. Greece? All right, that's better here. Okay, come on. We're start dreaming. I haven't heard from any of the lads. Guys, what would you do with $48 million? Let's go. Eric's got a good one.
I put it all into a Swiss bank account to avoid taxes. And then...
But then you're just going to let it sit in a Swiss bank account? Like, come on, who's spending this money? And all of you are like, nah, I'm going to invest it. All right. Okay, Lee and I literally had this conversation because I read that news article. And I was like, yo, what would we do if we won $48 million? And we were both like, all right, so first off, we're going to pay off our mortgage. We're going to get a nicer vehicle. We're going to, cover our family's, student debt and houses for them too. But after that, we were actually just like, yeah, holy moly, that is a lot of money. Like, what would you do? The nice thing is that, like, you get that money, you are set, my friend. You are set for life, aren't you? Like, yeah, no student debt. You don't have to have a mortgage. It's kind of mind-blowing, right? No, she is. She is. Because it's like you're set for life, but it's still a good idea to keep working. So she wants to keep working and still do what she wants to do, but now she doesn't have to have any debt. She could get a house, a car, all those fun things. It's kind of funny though, right? Like, I find it interesting that for a normal youth group, so not you guys, especially our junior youth, they'd automatically go to like cars, houses, vacations, an Xbox, like video games, like all these things, right? And normal people typically would. You guys are weird. But it's funny how we normally would go to things that we think are going to contribute to our happiness, right? And even some of those things you guys were talking about, that's right in there. But if you do some research about lottery winners after they win big, guess what? It shows that they don't always have a great time. They don't always expect what's coming to them. About 70% of lottery winners either lose or spend all of their money in less than 5 years. It brings them right back to square one, except they've probably quit their jobs. No kidding, right? Usually a massive house. It's like an impulse buy, and then they realize that they have like 4 people in their family, and they're like, why do we have 1,000 rooms? Yeah, right? Exactly. No kidding. You got to clean that thing. I have a tiny house, and I still can't clean it. They often get exploited by their family members and their friends. Your lifestyle can change. You get thrust into the spotlight. It can lead to a loss of friends. And guess what? The comparison trap stays. Because then you've got this massive house and you're looking around at all the other people with even bigger houses. And that comparison thing's still there. You're forced in the spotlight. You often end up in a place of discontentment and anxiety. That's what I read about past lottery winners. I've often used the quote by Jim Carrey. You remember what I'm talking about? Jim Carrey is a Canadian actor. He said, I wish everyone could get rich and famous and everything they ever wanted that they could see. That is not the answer. Wise words, Jim. So in this series, we have been looking at some of the common phrases that we see in our society and in our culture, phrases that you might see like in someone's Instagram bio or maybe like graffitied on a wall somewhere. They're phrases that a lot of people live by without question, and they seem to be good sources of wisdom and truth, but we've been going, I don't know about that. It's not always the case. And as we've been analyzing these phrases, we're comparing them to Jesus' words in the Sermon on the Mount, because, he's got a lot of wisdom, right? Because if Jesus really was who he said he was, if he really was the Son of God who died on a cross for you and I, who took away our sins, he gives us new life in his Spirit, oh man, his words have weight then for how we live and how we think and what we're living for, what our purpose is, which is pretty cool. And so tonight, we're going to talk about the phrase, do what makes you happy. Do what makes you happy. Who's heard that one before? Anyone seen that in someone's Instagram profile? Yeah. Bo, we got this sweater for him once at like Joe Fresh. I love Joe Fresh. And it was a really cute sweater. I loved it. The color was great. But there was just one problem. This tiny little like, do what makes you happy on the chest. We're like, that's really dumb. We just like cross out one of those letters and replace it with do what makes God happy or something like that. Anyways, Here's what happens if you do a quick Google search of the phrase, do what makes you happy. You get results like 15 reasons you should do what makes you happy. 7 ways to do more of what makes you happy. 5 reasons why it's important to do what makes you happy. And they come from websites like minimalismmadesimple.com or changeyourlifeforever.com or trackinghappiness.com or counselorwhocares.co.uk. All right, now hang on. I put a QR code on there for the Minimalism Made Simple one because that's the 15 reasons you should do what makes you happy. I put it on here. I give you permission to bust out your phones and like go there because it's so unreal. You got to see it to believe it, okay? I'm going to give you some of them. If you don't want to bust it out, that's fine. All right, here we go. Reason number 1 that you should do what makes you happier. Number 1, you'll be healthier. Unless what makes you happy is Krispy Kreme donuts. Yeah, but they do make me really happy. Number 2, you deserve to be happy. You do, yes. Do I now? Does the mass murderer also deserve to be happy? Number 3, nothing is unachievable with perseverance. Basically, you can do whatever you want as long as you try hard enough. You know what's so funny about that one? In describing that, they actually use Jim Carrey's life as the example for like, he went from living in a van to now he's a celebrity, he's making movies as a big shot. And so I guess they missed the part where he said that getting everything you ever want isn't the answer and that he was also like addicted and depressed. Oh boy. Number 4, you will inspire people. Wow. I'm not sure if that's what Jeffrey Dahmer was thinking about, but hey, he got his Netflix show, right? Inspiring, yeah. Number 5, you are in charge of your destiny. Oh yeah, I skipped a few. I know. I'm doing a bunch here. I'm not going to do all 15. Yeah. After that, there's a whole bunch more. Here's a couple of them. You only live so long. You know, YOLO. So yeah, let's go. It's one of the bravest things you can do, and your happiness is the most important thing in life. Wow. Thank you, minimalismmadesimple.com. Is it though? Is our happiness the most important thing in life? Who thinks that's true? None of you are putting up your hand because you're all like, we've been dissing these slogans all series long. You're right. And I've noticed a lot of people do indeed make happiness their top priority in life. I would say as a culture, as a whole, that's pretty typical of a lot of people. And when we talk about happiness, here's what those people would mean. They would mean a state of feeling good, of being happy, of contentment, of comfort and satisfaction that is highly associated with feelings, with feeling good, and avoiding anything that makes you not feel good, avoiding anything that would diminish your happiness. That's kind of the social media definition of it, okay? And I will say, guys, there's nothing wrong with being happy. There's nothing wrong with wanting to be happy and being happy, right? Like, under the right circumstances, that's key. There's doing things that bring you happiness, like, that's great. That can be life-giving, it'd be fun and exciting. It can certainly lead to a level of contentment in your life. But that's a big but. As we've been showing, these phrases can be full of lies. Now, before I get into it, I want you guys to do a little brainstorming ahead of time. What might be dangerous about the phrase, do what makes you happy? Okay, I'm going to give you a couple minutes for this one. Go.
A few moments later.
All right, sounds like the buzz is starting to die down. I want to hear what you guys come up with and see if you're going to preach this message for me. All right, what might be dangerous about the phrase, do what makes you happy? Why might this not be a good idea?
Love that. Okay. Well, like you said before, a serial killer likes killing people. That's what makes them happy. Well, that's not very good. Bad stuff would happen.
Correct. What else? What else might not be good?
If what makes you happy harms other people or puts your health in danger, like eating 10 Big Macs, that may make you happy, but it's not good for your health.
It's true. Supersize me, right? Dawek?
Okay, even if we look at this from like a non-Christian sense, it's kind of it doesn't really even fit in line with our current culture. Like, when we're so all about mental health and everything, are you going to tell someone who's struggling, just do what makes you happy? Like maybe we do, but even our culture would probably think that's not true. So it's kind of weird that we even preach this, even though I don't think our culture really believes it.
But I see it in people's Instagram bios all the time. It is interesting. I think with each of these phrases, there's people out there who like, yeah, profess these things, and then I think everyone underneath the layers kind of goes, this isn't actually good advice or true. It sounds good, right? Okay, one more, Kylie.
I think also do what makes you happy is a lot of pressure on everyone in like our culture, because what does make you happy?
You're getting to the right question, actually. Good job, Kylie Moore. All right. In week 1 of this series, we discussed the outcomes of the problems of the idea of live your truth, right? And the problem of evil, specifically, as it relates to live your truth, which you guys just hit on. And it's the same thing with follow your heart. It's the same thing with be true to yourself. And the same can be applied to this one, all right? What if what makes me happy is to bully others or to look at porn all day? What if what makes me happy is to shout racial slurs at people of color? What if what makes me happy is making bombs and detonate them in public places? Yeah. Clearly, Gina, did you just cheer? Oh boy. Clearly this falls apart under the problem of evil, okay? But I think to take that approach tonight would be a little too simplistic. I want to go a little deeper with you guys. I think you can take it. Instead, we're going to look at an underlying assumption about our very purpose in life. Is it to be happy? Should we do what makes us happy? And is it even the right question to be asking? So I want to first turn to the words of my man Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount. We're going to look at Matthew chapter 6. If you got your bubbles, bust them out. If not, follow along on the screen. So here we go. Starts off like this. Jesus says, "Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth where moths and vermin destroy, and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where moths and vermin do not destroy, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will also be. The eye is the lamp of the body. If your eyes are healthy, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eyes are unhealthy, your whole body will be full of darkness. And if the light within you is actually darkness, how great that darkness is." I'm going to go through there again. I want to go through it again and pull out some stuff one chunk at a time. And then we're going to compare that to this phrase, do what makes you happy. Okay, so let's go back a bit. "Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moths and vermin destroy, and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where moths and vermin do not destroy, and where thieves do not break in and steal." If you ever see something repeated in Scripture, guess what? It's important. Here's some things to take note of. For one, Jesus is talking about how like our money and our possessions, they are temporary, all right? Moth larvae back in Jesus' time, they could eat through robes and the valuable fabrics that were treasured by the wealthy people of his day. And the word vermin here, your translation might say rust. Well, it's because they mean the same thing. In the original Greek, the word is brosis. Can I hear you say brosis? Very good. Good job, Greeks. Which means consumable, eating, rust away, vermin. If you put it in Google Translate, it comes out as breakfast. You're eating away, right? Jesus is saying that the things of this world, the things we have here on earth, they can be taken away. They can be eaten away, they can turn to nothing, they rot, they disintegrate, and they can be consumed by the world around us. Why put all your worth and your energy and your value into something that is here one day and boom, just like that, could be taken away from you? That has a lot to do with Jeff's talk on identity that we did a couple weeks ago. Let's keep going. Jesus continues, "For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." And Jesus is saying that your heart belongs to what you treasure most. So what might that be for you? Like if you had Jack Sparrow's compass that pointed to whatever you wanted most in this world, like would it be pointing to something? Do you have an idea of what it would be pointing to? If it's God, maybe it would just be spinning all the time and never stop, right? But like, how are you doing with that? If you want to get a good glimpse into someone's heart, a couple ways I think you can do that. For one, look at their bank statements. Look at your own. What do you spend your money on? Because I think that actually often reveals the things that are really important to us. Or how about your Instagram profile or your TikTok, whatever you're posting What are you posting about? What are you talking about? What do you like to show the world? I think that often points to what's going on in here. But compare that to what Jesus says to his disciples later. So he first says, where your treasure is, your heart will be also. A little later on in his ministry, he says this. I know you know this one. When asked about what the most important thing you can do, Jesus says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind, and with all your strength. This is the first and greatest commandment. So then, if we think about it, a disciple, right, someone who's a Jesus follower, should love God first and foremost above everything else. Not themselves, not their things, not their family, not their career or their success. God. God and God alone. When we store God up in our hearts as our greatest treasure, we have something that cannot be taken away. No moth or vermin can destroy it. It can't go anywhere. How are you doing with that? How are you doing with storing up God in your heart above everything else? I'm going to get more to that later. Let's keep reading. Jesus then says, the eye is the lamp of the body. If your eyes are healthy, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eyes are unhealthy, then your whole body will be full of darkness. If the light within you is darkness, how great is that darkness? Now the Greek word here for eye is ophthalmos. You want to say ophthalmos? Good job. Ophthalmos means eye, and by extension, the definition of it would also mean the means of mental perception and understanding. It's your worldview. It's the way you see the world around you, the way you process, the way you think. And so Jesus is saying, when our eye is off base, when it's a bad eye, when we have our sight set on the wrong things, it can result in a deep internal darkness. My study notes in my Bible said, a moral blindness that diminishes the ability to see and pursue what is good. Whoever wrote that, like, whoa, deep, sir, or ma'am. Basically, it does this to the point where even the things that we think are good about ourselves, such as our skills or our giftings, can be distorted. More on that later, too. So let's apply this, what we've learned from Jesus about how like our eyes need to be healthy, focused on the right things, that we need to love God, we need to store up treasures in heaven, not here on earth. Let's put all of that into mind as we think about this phrase a little bit more. Do what makes you happy. And let's look at it with a little bit more of a critical eye here, okay? So there's our phrase, do what makes you happy. First off, we already talked about this. What's wrong? It collapses under the problem of evil. Not going to spend a lot of time here. What's stopping someone from saying like, hey, Brad, I'm just following my heart, right? I'm just being true to myself, and I just love punching random people in the face. Just do what makes you happy. Yeah, we know that doesn't work. We know that's wrong. The phrase doesn't work. It's because it assumes that everyone's just going to naturally pick a good outcome, right? But what else? Okay, second thing I think that we could take a look at here is that it's an illusion. True happiness doesn't actually exist in the definition that we would think of it as. Our social media definition, like we mentioned earlier, is about never having anything in your lives that diminish your happiness. That's impossible. Renee told me that's like a cat trying to chase a laser pointer, okay? Like even if you grab it, there's nothing to grab. Anyone's cat do that? Mine does. It's hilarious, right? It's always a good time. Why is it always fun? I've talked before about the problem of disordered desires. Basically, the idea that we love, it's not wrong to love like your family or your career or things or your success, whatever it might be. But the problem comes when we love the wrong things in the wrong order. So like if I love my job more than I love my wife, that's a problem. That's a disordered desire. That comes from a man named Augustine. Or St. Augustine as well. He was a North African theologian and a bishop. He went through this huge journey of seeking out happiness before he became a Jesus follower. So funny, right? Like art history, people are weird. It was a Western European thing, and so most of the paintings out there, he looks super white. Same with Jesus. So I was like kind of intentional about finding one that he didn't look white in. But Augustine, he longed to be educated and to go to the big city, to get in with the popular crowd, to become really powerful and wealthy. And he also wanted to have sex. A lot of sex. And he did. He went from big city to big city, going to the elite universities. He got in with the powerful people. He had all the sex, and he went all the way up to Rome and to Milan, which was the head of the Roman Empire at the time. And when he got to the top, whatever that means, he realized he was still unsatisfied. There was nothing there. There was still a yearning within him he couldn't satisfy. He was just stuck. You ever heard the song, I Still Haven't Found What I'm Looking For by U2? Thank you. I'm glad you guys are nodding your heads right now. You all right. I like it. It's an old song, but I'm glad you heard it. But basically, that was Augustine's theme song for his early life. He just had not found it. And so here, it leads him to realize that happiness wasn't something that could be fully satisfied here on this earth. Listen to what he says in his famous work, Confessions, which is like this long, drawn-out prayer that he wrote down to God. He says, "But herein lay my sin. It was not in him, God, but in his creatures, myself and the rest, that I sought pleasures, honors, and truths. I fell hereby to sins, or to sorrows, troubles, and errors." Augustine knew that happiness could not come from anything here on this earth, because anything here on this earth is temporary, just as Jesus was talking about. Happiness is just so temporary. It's so fickle, right? Like, how many of you, what made you happy when you were 6? Emily, what was it? Barbies. Do Barbies still make you happy? Not in the same way. Not as much, right? Yeah, of course, right? Like, I used to love Lego. Still do. Can't wait till my kids are old enough to play Lego. But it's not going to bring me happiness in the same way. Because when we're 6, our happiness looks like one thing. And when you're 26, it's going to look like another thing. And so if we live our lives chasing happiness, that changes just because our hearts change as well. We will never be at peace. Because true happiness, the way social media tells us and the way our culture talks about it right now, the constant good feelings, the contentment, and the no problems in our life, it's not real. It's not real. It's an illusion. True happiness in that way is a lie. It doesn't exist. Jesus said in John 16:33, "In this life, you will have trouble." You will. Parenting moment here. Okay, my generation, the millennials, we grew up with a parenting strategy called helicopter parents. Have you ever heard of that term? Okay, of where your like mom or dad like follows you around everywhere, just like making sure you don't like do anything stupid or get hurt or whatever. You know what your generation's parent terminology is? Lawnmower parents. Yeah, it's not just a parent that hovers around and never gives their kid any freedom. It's a parent who mows any obstacle out of their way. You didn't get a good enough report card on your mark in your report card? Yeah, your parent's going to go to that teacher and ream them out in order to get you that good one. Or you didn't get a job? Yeah, well, mom's going to come in and convince that manager to give you a job. That's the style we've seen. I'm not saying that's what your parents specifically do, but that's the term that's come out recently. Avoiding anything that would diminish their child's happiness. And yet Jesus said, in this life you will have trouble. Not that you might have trouble. You will. But he also said right after, take heart, for I have overcome the world. It is impossible to avoid bad circumstances in our life so that we can be circumstantially happy. Okay, so it's an illusion. Also, number 3, doing what makes you happy contributes to a vicious cycle of selfishness and hyper-individualism. I know that was a lot of big words. But basically, it flows from what Elisa talked about a couple weeks ago, from the lie behind all lies. To seize autonomy from God, say like, nope, I'm going to be my own boss. And then to redefine good and evil for ourselves, to basically make our own morality. And basically in our culture, we would see that people are almost like willfully selfish, right? We think about ourselves first and foremost above everything else out there. It kind of plays out like this. Everything is about me and what will bring me satisfaction. And I'm going to do whatever I can to make that happen. I'm going to avoid anything I'm uncomfortable with. That's of paramount importance. And that's going to justify shifts in morality. It's going to justify manipulative behavior for our own personal advantage, avoiding hard work, and a lot more. But if we look closely at Jesus' words and Augustine's story, we see that even when we make happiness our top priority in life, not only is it illusion, it's also idolatry. We're storing up treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy. It puts our happiness as more important than God. It's a disordered desire. as we talked about before. And Augustine found out, he figured this out. He saw that his ultimate happiness could only be found in God. Only in God. Not him, not this world. He had to take his eyes and his focus off of himself and put it somewhere else. And Jesus tells us to store up treasures in heaven. Who's in heaven? Yeah, Jesus, God, right? Jesus is saying the most important thing in this life and to our life is God himself. Our greatest treasure is him and him alone. Okay, and lastly, happiness is dependent on life's circumstances. And here's the thing. No matter how happy we are, even if everything goes smoothly the way we want it, there's always going to be that someone. Her name's probably Brenda, who's got it better than you. Come on, Brenda. There's always someone else out there who seems to be happier. There's always someone who's better, who looks better than you, who has better grades, who has a better house, a better car, clothes. They're more athletic. They're a better musician. They've got a hotter boyfriend or girlfriend. There's always someone. There's always someone. The comparison thing is real. But did you know that the opposite of happiness is not sadness? Maybe I should say the opposite of joy is not sadness. Because sadness comes from something. I actually think the opposite of our happiness and joy is envy, is desiring what someone else has. You're sad because you're envious of the circumstances of someone else's life, right? This one hits home for me, if I'm really honest. Like, the house envy thing is real. Okay, my brother, he's in home renovations, and he's a woodworker. Okay, and I'm a youth pastor, and I can't do much handy things apart from, like, hanging up artwork. Okay, but my brother, he can just, like, I feel like making a fireplace today. Seriously, he just goes and does it. He's got a new fireplace in his house now. I'm like, come on. Or he's just got these beautiful, like, live-edge wooden shelves or live-edge tables. He's just renovating his kitchen. He's just building all his own cabinets, because he can. And his house looks beautiful, and I'm just like, yeah, that'd be nice. Or like my mother-in-law and father-in-law, they have this beautiful place in London that backs onto a wooded ravine. They just have like deer coming into their backyard and wild turkeys and owls and foxes. I'm just like, I look into my backyard and I see my neighbor's place that doesn't mow their lawn, or there's trees still leaning on the fence that came down like last spring in a storm, and yeah, dog poo everywhere. Yeah, it's real. It's real. I get it. I've been there. There's many, many moments where I look at what other people have and I go like, ah, man, yeah, I wish I had that. Money, nice things, a home, whatever it might be. Guys, envy prevents us from finding contentment in what God has already given to us in a present moment. I remember, it's so funny, on that house topic, I had my buddy Nate over, and him and his wife, and at the time they were living in this tiny little 2-bedroom apartment on like the 3rd floor or whatever, and they had to go through like 5 doors just to get to their room, right? Like, it was just not great, not easy. And they had a kid on the way, and their house was cluttered because they didn't want to get rid of some of these things they were saving for later in their life, and they came over and they're like, oh man, I love your house. I was like, geez, I got to check myself before I wreck myself, right? Like, this is something good that I have. I have a house. That's something that most people in this world don't have. And here I am thinking I don't have enough. Envy is like a poison that seeps in, and it slowly kills our joy, and it aims it at other people that we want to take down with us. Because then we start to say things about them that maybe doesn't paint them in such a good light. I think it's really good to go back to Jesus' words from our passage here tonight. The eye is the lamp of the body. If your eyes are healthy, the whole body will be full of light. I think we need to be very intentional about the things that we look at and think about and process, about not desiring other people's lives. I can't help but think that maybe we may need to unfollow a few influencers on Instagram who make us think that we're going to be happy if you just had that house, or if you just had that workout routine, or that body, or that wardrobe, or that girlfriend, or that whatever. So all that to say, all those things to say, when we make happiness our ultimate goal in life, we live in such a way that is self-focused and fragile in the face of suffering. We're going to get to that more too. So that's why I think doing what makes you happy is terrible advice. So then, question, how do we find true happiness? How do we do that? how do we find true happiness? And I wrote in there, yes, trick question. It's not even the right question. Let's go back to Jesus' words. Store up treasures in heaven. And remember, Jesus also said, love the Lord your God with all your heart and your soul and mind and strength. This is the first and greatest commandment. So I don't know. I think the question then isn't how can I be happy, but rather, how can I love God? How can I love God more than anything else? Let's go back to Augustine again. He's a cool guy, right? Lived in like 4th century. Man, that's wild. After coming to Christ, here's what Augustine says about true happiness. For there is a joy not granted to the wicked, but only to those who worship you, thankfully. He's talking to the Lord. And this joy you yourself are. The happy life is this, to rejoice to you, in you, and for you. That is it, and there is no other. But those who think there is another follow after other joys and not the true one. But their will is still not moved except by some image or a shadow of joy. When we love God first, I'm going to tell you something a little mind-blowing. We don't find happiness. You don't. You get something better. God. You get something better than happiness. You get God himself. Did you catch that in Augustine's words? Did you see that? He says, this joy you yourself are. God is joy. God is love, as the Bible talks about. He's all things that are good, peace, strength, contentment, all that is good. God is our joy. And there's a difference between happiness and joy, is there not? Right? Happiness is circumstantial. Joy is not. Happiness does not coexist with prolonged sadness or grief, but joy can. We can still experience joy in the midst of our grief and struggles because we are anchored to the source of our joy, God himself, who loves you deeply, who gives you hope and peace and purpose, and who remains in all circumstances, even when our life circumstances suck. But here's a warning. You're never going to be happy if you go to God to make you happy. All right? Why? Because you are expecting God to meet your definition of happiness. Then you're just treating him like a magic vending machine in the sky or a genie in a lamp. That's not loving God. That's using God. You're treating him as a tool. You're not loving God for who he is. You assume that God's purpose in the entire universe is your happiness. A wrong. In the words of Dwight, false. The only way to find satisfaction is to go to God simply because you love him. We go to God because he's worthy, because he deserves our allegiance and our devotion. We love him by following in his ways and thinking about what he has done for you and I on the cross through Jesus. It's actually because of the cross that we have a greater reason for living than just to be happy. You have a purpose because of it. So let's look at what the Apostle Paul says to his church in Philippi. He says, I rejoice greatly in the Lord that at last you renewed your concern for me. Indeed, you were concerned, but you had no opportunity to show it. I'm not saying this because I am in need, for I have learned to be content in whatever the circumstances. I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty, and boy, did he ever. I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. And here comes one of the verses that gets plucked out of the Bible and out of context all the time, and it drives me crazy. We think, yeah, I'll win this basketball game because I can do all things through him who gives me strength. Yeah, Paul wasn't talking about basketball. No, he was talking about the secret of being content, of being at peace, because he knew it came from Jesus. That's why he says, I can do all this through him who gives me strength. Paul went to God in every circumstance because Paul loved God. And because of that, he experienced contentment in every moment. Okay, I want to wrap up. So here's some important things we learned, okay? First off, doing what makes you happy collapses under the problem of evil. Duh, we know that. There's a difference between joy and happiness, right? Happiness is circumstantial. Joy is not. Joy remains because it's in God, and God remains. When we're in a deep relationship with God, we can still have joy and peace in spite of the suffering in life, and joy can coexist with the sadness and with the grief. Happiness does not because it's circumstantial. You get it. doing what makes us happy just leaves us grasping for more. It pushes us towards envy and discontentment rather than being content with what God has given us in the present moment. You want to push back on that? Get into the habit of writing down things that you're thankful for each day. I had a youth back at Camp Crossroads back in the summer, and she said that, every night I write down 3 things I'm thankful for in my journal. It's a really, really good habit, and those are wise words, my friend. Happiness isn't wrong, but it shouldn't be our life's greatest goal. Because when it is, we're never going to be satisfied because, as we talked about, it's an illusion. It doesn't even exist. Which leads us to the grand finale here, okay? When we make Jesus the ultimate goal, we experience the byproduct of that relationship, and that is joy and contentment, yes, with what we have. We don't need to grasp for more because we know that God has already given us everything we need himself. And I want to end off by just giving you guys a little update on where me and my family are at. For those of you who've been tracking with me, my mom has been diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, both in her liver and in her colon. We went on a cancer journey of chemotherapy that didn't work, and we decided not to keep trying. We're pursuing palliative care, which is just care for the end of life. And we know that there's a reality coming. We're praying for a miracle every single day. Yes, we are. But we're also in a place of knowing what can come. And yet, Mom and my dad have been incredibly steadfast to Jesus in this. And I got to say, man, he's shown up for me in my life in ways that I cannot describe, to the point where I would almost say I wouldn't have it in a different way. And I think my parents would say that too. The other day I was talking to Mom, actually just yesterday. I went over there for lunch, and it was the first day I actually saw her in a hospital bed in our dining room. That was heavy. And I'm paraphrasing here, but this is something she said. She said, there's so much good in every day. There's beauty everywhere. In people who come and visit and talk, and they're just present. She said, we've experienced so much kindness. And oh man, yes, they have. The stash of gift cards they've got on their shelf is nuts. She says, God has been so present, and we see sweet reminders of his love through simple things. The birds at the feeder, which she can see right from her bed in the front window. Kind emails from people they don't even remember. They don't even remember them, but these people are telling them they changed their life. A morning coffee. And hugs from loved ones. She says there's still joy and something to celebrate every day. Yes. Yes, there is, Mom. Let's pray. Oh, Jesus. You are our joy and our strength. You are the best thing we could ever hope for in this life. You are the reason we have to live. You are the reason that we are loved. You are the reason there is joy and peace and strength and courage and everything good here in this world. It's because of you. And Lord, I just want to confess that I'm sorry. We are sorry for all the times where we've lost focus on that. And we've chased after worldly things, whether they be the grades we might need to get the right school, to get the right job, to then just work our butts off till we retire and die. That's not going to bring us happiness. It's not going to bring us joy. We know you are the ultimate source of that, God, and we want to focus on you. We want to strive towards you with everything we've got. So, Lord, would you just remind us of who you are? Would you remind us of that peace, that joy that you bring? I pray that we would love you for who you are, because you have loved us, God. And that as we grow closer to you each and every day, that our love would go stronger. And we would look back on our life and see that, man, you have been there every step of the way. And that we wouldn't want it any other way. In Jesus' name I pray. And all of God's people said, amen. All right. We're going to finish off with some small group discussions. So I've got some questions on the screen. I'm going to give you I'll give you 10 minutes. Sound good? Yeah? All right.
10 minutes. Take it away. We'll bring it back together at the end.
A few moments later.
All right, folks. Looks like the conversations are coming to a close. Does anyone need a little bit more time? We're good? All right. Well, I want to hear what you guys were talking about. Let's go with the first question, just our weekly chew and spit. What stood out to you guys from tonight's message? What was sitting there? What was hard to process? Anything you're just like, yeah, man, I don't agree with you. That's totally fine. You can do that. Jana.
What stood out to me was when you said that happiness isn't the opposite of sadness. I found that cool.
Kind of adding on to what Jana was saying, kind of like how you mentioned happiness comes more from envy, and that joy comes more from sadness. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyone else? Anything else that stand out?
Randomly answered things. Good. Go. I think it's kind of for the third question, but so I have two kind of analogies. One is our cousin's dog used to love to chase squirrels, and it was like his favorite thing, would chase squirrels all around, and one day he actually caught a squirrel, and he just stared at the squirrel and was like, what am I supposed to do with this squirrel? And just staring at the squirrel, and then the squirrel just like, they were just like staring at each other, and then the squirrel just like ran away, and then he was like chasing it again. So like when you like catch that happiness, what are you actually going to do with it? And then my second analogy was I was listening to a documentary about these two tanker ships, and they both split in half in the middle of this storm, and they're both like made at the same time. So they're like, what happened to these two tankers? Like, how did they split in half? And they figured out that like when they were built, it was during World War II, so they were built really fast with like faulty welding. And so when you're trying to reach your happiness and you try to stuff in all these like things that don't bring you joy, and you're doing it like super fast, it may fulfill the purpose at the moment and it may last for a little bit, but then one day you're going to hit a storm and it's just going to split in half.
Whoa. Your brother was clapping for you there. That was deep. I love it. Abby?
It was a word that you said that was different than what I thought you were going to say. But you said when you follow Jesus, you don't get happiness. And I thought you were going to say you don't get joy, you get joy instead, but you said you get God. And that was kind of a pivotal moment I've been in.
I think it's important because it goes back to how if we go to God to make us happy, we're just using him. We're not loving him. And we also think that joy even, or the idea of joy, is better than God, which I would say, yeah, nah. God is better. Yeah. Anyone else want to, like, any of these questions? Love to hear more thoughts. Yeah.
Again, not really sure which question it was. You know, we were talking about everything and anything. But we were saying how, like, with happiness, you have that, like, space in your heart, and you're trying to, like, fill it, like, with things of this world, like, oh, you need this and this, but like the only thing that can fill it is Jesus. But even like when you have Jesus in there, you're still trying to sometimes shove in other things and try and like fit in more things, because like, oh, you know, there's more room, more things can make me happy, but it's like, no, Jesus is what we want.
Yeah, I have an analogy for what you just said. It's like when you're going on vacation and like you only need like 5 pairs of clothes, your toothbrush, and that's all you need. But then you like stuff in everything, and then once you get to like the airport, it weighs too much, so you can't bring any of it.
Dude, I literally just did this that last weekend at the winter retreat. I'm like, why did I bring 8 pairs of boxers? We're gone for 2 days.
I get the chance to go to Africa a lot, which is like a really, really great experience. And from what I've learned about happiness is like I've seen so many kids over there who like saw their parents die. They don't have a house. They don't have electricity. They don't even know what they're going to eat tomorrow.
And yet, like, walking through those slums, that's the happiest that I've seen people, like, ever. And it's just so insane when people, like, rely 100% on God and 0% on earthly things, that's when you can find true joy and happiness. And you realize, like, it's not the things of the earth, money, cars, a house, things like that, that'll actually, like, get you to where you want to be in your life. It's like 100% fully relying and trusting on God, and that he's going to help you get to the next day. And that's when you can find, like, full joy, not just temporary happiness.
Preach it, girl. You're going to make me cry. That was awesome. Okay, coming over here.
I actually don't have an analogy. Except what really stood out to me was how you were talking about how true happiness doesn't actually exist. It's not possible to attain, except then the question at the end was, how do we obtain true happiness? And it wasn't just a trick question. It's not possible to answer.
I'm really glad these things were sticking with you guys. So good. Last chance. Are we going for more analogies here? All right. Both of you, whoever wants to go first, and then we'll wrap things up.
Depends. Maybe you'll say the same thing that I was planning to say.
Maybe. This one is for the third question. We were kind of talking about how happiness is the shadow of joy. And when you chase after happiness, you only get the shadow. But when you chase after joy, you actually get both.
I think might have been the first question. I don't know. But we were talking about, like, the comparison thing and how it's like, oh, like, I might have really good grades, but then my friend gets these better grades, and then I'm like, oh, well, I'm happy with my grades, but, oh, I could just be more happy if I had her grades or something. And we were saying, like, after, like, going on social media and Instagram, you see all these, like, perfect lives and, like, the reels with the cute little song, you know, they're going to this, like, tropical island and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, they have this, like, perfect, like, life, and you're like, why can't I be like that? Like, that, if I had that, then I could be happy. So it's, yeah, just the comparison thing.
I am going to, just for time's sake, wrap things up. It was so funny as I was preparing this message, I like literally finished typing, and the next morning in my inbox was an article about a study that had just come out of Harvard this week. And it's the longest scientific study that's ever been done in human history, 84 years long, on what makes people flourish. Here's what their conclusion was. It's not things, it's not trips, it's not money. It is deep relationships. And I go, yeah, duh. We were designed to be in relationship with the Lord. That makes a lot of sense. We were designed to be in relationship with God and with each other. Of course, what's going to fulfill us is God. It's relationship, a closeness. So, maybe don't leave here without just, like, putting your arm around your buddy and saying, like, I like you. Something like that, all right? Good. Don't give up on each other. But don't try and do it alone. Go to the Lord. Go to God. Be with each other. In Jesus' name, amen. You guys are amazing. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We have come to the end of our evening, but don't feel like you got to leave. Hang around. Play games. Be together. Be happy. Question box. Don't forget. Love you guys. See you next Friday, and see you at church.